So we've all seen the blue and green non-GMO labels in the grocery store, but did you know consuming GMOs could actually benefit you? So we've all been faced with the dilemma to buy organic or non-GMO products or their modified counterparts, but we can make the decision to stop avoiding GMOs. Not only is this attempt to avoid them nearly impossible, but it's highly impractical. So I've done a lot of research over the years on GMOs, what can be defined as a GMO, the negative connotations of them, and the benefits that GMOs have had on society. First, I'll start by defining GMOs. Second, I'll go into what caused the avoidance of GMOs. Third, I'll talk about the near impossibility of this avoidance. And lastly, why you should no longer avoid them. So I'll start by defining GMOs. So Chelsea Powell from Science in the News describes the process of modification and what is considered a GMO. There are two different definitions, the common definition and the FDA definition, as she explains in her 2015 article, How to Make a GMO. The FDA definition is defined as anything that has been bioengineered or genetically engineered, while the common definition is anything that's been modified. So now that you understand what a GMO is, I'm going to explain why there has been avoidance of it. So the controversial modifications don't occur in the wild and are therefore deemed unnatural and they shouldn't exist. And just the general lack of education associated with GMOs results in the negative connotation. So there are many different anti-GMO organizations, to name a few: Protect Nature Now, Organic Consumer Association, and the Non-GMO Project. They have millions of members worldwide, and the Non-GMO Project is the one associated with those little blue and green labels on the back of products. So they all have different mantras, but they mainly rally under two cries: that people should no longer be consuming GMOs, and that all GMO products should be labeled as such. So the overall negative connotation associated with GMOs is the trend associated with GMOs. This is detailed in the Polish study done by Piotr Rozymski and Alexandra Kroklek in 2016, named Attitudes Towards Genetically Modified Organisms in Poland, to GMO or not to GMO. It resulted in 60.2% of people surveying that GMOs should not be produced anymore or distributed, but it said that 53.1% admitted that they did not have sufficient knowledge on GMOs, and 20% of the people couldn't even define what a GMO was. So now that you know the reasons to avoid, I'll explain why it's nearly impossible to avoid them. So based off of the common definition of GMOs, selective breeding is included in this definition. So selective breeding first started occurring about 10,000 years ago with the hunter and gatherers. If you own a pet, you're going to support selective breeding because many of the pets that we have today are descendants from other animals that either used to exist or exist today. So dogs, for example, are descended from wolves, but through human manipulation, they developed the traits that we associate with dogs, such as the waggy tail, the droopy ears, and the soft coat. So now that you know the broadness of genetically modified organisms, it's a lot easier to see how it's basically entirely impractical to avoid the consumption of GMOs. So the GMOs have actually had a positive effect on the agriculture industry. An example of this would be bananas. They used to be about 3 inches long and have very large, hard seeds. Eggplants used to be about the size of a golf ball, white and extremely bitter. And peaches used to be about the size of a cherry, had a pit that took up a third of the entire space in the peach and had a very, very bitter, waxy skin. So some products wouldn't even exist without genetic engineering. Example of this would be papaya, which with the papaya ring spot virus almost was pushed to extinction until the genetically altered papaya plant that was resistant to the virus was developed. And most likely, if you've had a papaya within the past 10 years, you've had a descendant of this genetically modified papaya. Corn is another not well-known example of it. BT corn was developed to repel insect larvae, and it's used in almost every single corn product, including corn syrup, cornmeal, and corn tortilla chips. So after I explain the benefits of GMOs on society, I'm going to recap what I've discussed today. So first, I defined GMOs. Second, I went over the history of the avoidance of GMOs. Third, I talked about the broadness of GMOs in everyday society. And lastly, I talked about the benefit of GMOs on society. Stop avoiding GMOs. Buy a product because you want to buy that product and not because someone tells you that you shouldn't because it's got GMOs. Next time you're standing in a grocery store contemplating whether to buy organic or non-GMO products, remember, GMOs are friends and food.